And since the last time we said in the minute, Donna, there was a lot of things that have transpired. You've been able to go to camp, so you're seeing this. But let's look at the 4 items that we thought was important at the end of the season. The quarterback play. We have to see if we have a good quarterback. This young guy ready to play, and the league have had the whole all season to look at him, so he must be prepared. Offensive line. Quarterback can't play well if the offensive line doesn't play well. And I tell you what, I'm a little disappointed, but we'll get a chance to talk about that. Other side of the ball, we looked at the linebackers and the defensive backs. We need to see stock improvement. Now, the 2 strengths of the team is really the wide receivers and the defensive line. Now, you've been going out to training camp each and every week, and I want you to get down. Now, if you're going to be scared to say something, you might just cut your mic off now.
You know, I'm not scared to say nothing.
You better bring it. You better bring it. Do you see improvement? Tell me what you've seen.
So, but Tony, before we get into the meat of everything, it was some players that made this team as far as the wide receivers group. That wide receiver group is loaded, and it's a couple of people. Mitchell Tinsley is a rookie, and Byron Pringle had been here before, but these are wide receivers that made the team again. And you're going to like this. Andre Jones Jr., made this team number 48. He's really played well. You would like him, Tony. I mean, he's really aggressive. And then, you know, we're going to hear from Logan Thomas, who's been out, you know, the last couple of weeks of training camp with a calf injury. And Tony, I wanted you to talk a little bit when we come back from these interviews about a calf injury, because you was into physical therapy. And those things can linger on, but Logan Thomas is so key to this offense. But let's listen to guys who made this for the first time and those guys that are coming. What went through your mind first when you heard that news?
That, you know, I really wanted to tell my family first. That was kind of the first thing that went through my mind. But, you know, that, you know, all the hard work that, you know, over the last 6-7 years that I've been putting in, you know, had paid off, and that, you know, all my hard work is, you know, really, you know, going to a good place.
What is it going to feel like when you take that field for the first time in a regular season game?
Oh, it's going to feel great. I mean, this has always been my dream, honestly. You know, growing up, you know, I always envisioned myself being, you know, in this position. You know, it wasn't how I envisioned it, but, like, it's everything I thought it would be. But, yeah, when I get out there, I'm going to be just ready to, you know, do my part when I get out there and dominate.
And now, since the regular season is getting ready to start, what will it feel like to take the field for the first time in a regular season game?
It feel like a little kid on Saturday for a Pee Wee game, man. Just except it's on Sunday, just go out there and have fun.
You said that this was a lifetime dream when I talked to you during training camp. Just talk about that dream of playing in the NFL and seeing yourself finally here.
I just don't want to take it for granted. I just want to go out there and be the best I can every day.
What would your coaches and everybody back home say about you making this team?
They always say, they know I can do it. I was always different. I put the work in. Hard work pays off. Byron,
just talk about being on this roster again. What are you feeling? What went through your mind when you heard your name again in a loaded wide receiving group?
I'm coming to work like I'm used to. Just come in and work and keep going. Looking forward to each day to work and showcase my talent.
What do you think showcased yourself this preseason and training camp? What really stood out about you and your game this year?
Me just going out there and playing hard every down, every rep count, every play count. So just going out and executing at a high level and playing fast. Man, I appreciate everything that's been given to me. I know I put in the time and the work to be able to come in and be able to make the team. That's where them guys see me. That's where they see me at. So, you know, I just take it and run with it and keep the hard hat. Don't never lose focus and never lose the grind.
Feel good. Feel much better. I appreciate the time that they gave me to get to the point I need to be at right now, and just excited for what next week holds and getting this thing started off. Yeah, I feel good. Yeah, I feel back to normal. Feels good getting my feet back under me, be out here with the guys, and really start to get this thing tuned up. I guess the season doesn't start in the preseason. The season starts September 10th, and I'm just happy to be a part of it and ready to go then.
Talk a little bit about Logan Thomas. You know, with that calf injury during the training camp, Can that linger on? And like I said, he's important in this offense with Eric Bieniemy, and we know what he did in Kansas City with the Titans.
He is so important with this offense. And number one, if you realize it, Bieniemy always made the tight end a featured individual in Kansas City. And it's beginning to be something that you see around the league. At the same time, Logan came in a few years ago and he was looking to be that type of tight end, but he's had problems with injury. So they have to secure that space, make sure that he can give them enough time. And if he can't, have the right people behind him so the offense can continue. You know, the other thing that I like about this new group, they kept saying things like, I've worked hard for this. I want to be here. It's nothing like I'm lucky to be here and this great to be here. It's like, I'm going to bring something to this team. This is what this team is needing right now. The Commanders need young people that have played a little bit before, are coming in and ready to play, and they'll be an even better team. But if you look at these situations right now, and one of the most important places is the tight end position to make this offense go. To make the tight end position go, you got to have a good running game. Now you're going back to the offensive line. Therefore, we have to see, and we're not going to give up on them right away, but at the same time, we must look at them with a little bit of trepidation saying, ooh, can they make this happen? If they do, then your quarterback is good. So I tell you, there's some things out there right now. Matter of fact, they kept a good defensive lineman. So does that tell me that maybe somebody's getting ready to leave?
Wonder who you talking about? That
you've been out there, Donna, and you've been telling me you've been getting the in and the skinny and the mini. So talk to me.
Well, yeah, Tony, talk about the skinny and the mini. Let's start with the offensive side of the ball. Sam Howell is the starting quarterback. He beat Jacoby Brissett. And I think that they were grooming Sam anyway to be the starting quarterback. But just let me say this. He does look good. You can see the development. And, you know, people need to realize that it's going to be some hiccups with him, growing pains with him. But what do you like about Sam? Let's start with the quarterback position and go down since the 53-man roster has set. But we know that with the cuts and everything across the NFL, they're going to bring in some people, and they're looking at the linebacker position and the offensive line. Talk to me about Sam, and what do you think about him in his first full season of being that starting quarterback?
You mentioned the former, then you mentioned the latter before you speak of that, and you were talking about the offensive line, and that may be how Sam goes. That offensive line, right now, Sam has a good release. He has a strong release. They do need to be a little bit quicker, and they have already identified that. He has mobility, but one thing he do not have where he's needing that offensive line is experience. So the way Sam will go will be, how do your running game go? Can your running backs fit into this Bieniemy type running game? Can Mr. Robinson go to his neighborhood? What we have to do is just find out, is Gibson the one because he's a multi-back? So we have to identify that offensive line, that running game, and then that'll tell us how the quarterback is going to be. But as I said, the offensive line would dictate, and we're not giving up on them right away. We're looking for them to come in right away.
I don't know. You sound like it.
That's why I'm trying to make sure that they don't know. I'm not giving up on them. But I'm looking at, if you really want it to be realistic, they may be in the best league in the East that there is right now. And they're the beasts of the East, all of them, all four of these teams. So therefore, you have to not just improve for your own team. You got to improve so the individual you're playing against to try to win your division are the individual that you can beat. And to do that, you got to have a solid game plan, running, passing, protection, and pass rushing.
Well, let's talk about the offensive line again, only because both of us thought that going into the season, that was going to be the hiccup or the area of concern, because I didn't think that they drafted enough offensive linemen. I would pick the offensive lineman in the beginning because this has been the area this team has suffered. But even with the Eric Bieniemy, you know, your offensive line is your offensive line. So let me throw out some numbers to you. The offensive line allowed seventh most sacks in the NFL with 48 last year, 23rd in the pass blocking, 26 on the run blocking. Not a lot of carry over from last year, though, with this offensive line. And they've switched. Charles, the tackle, has been switched to a guard, and then Sam transition from right tackle to the right guard. Now, with all those moving parts, as far as Charles switching to another position and also Sam switching, what's the outlook? Is that easy, Tony? Because even though you played on the defensive line, when you start switching people around from position, from a tackle to a guard to a tackle, how difficult is that?
If you can accomplish that, you have something like we had with the Hogs back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, where you have individuals that are interchangeable. But when you have a young team and you're doing that, that's just more they have to learn. So to me right now with the offensive line, I put everyone in one position and make them learn that position. Then I start moving individuals. When they have accomplished that, I start moving them. So what I'm telling you is we got to have consistency, and that's in anything. That's in your running game, that's your passing game, that's your pass rushing, your defensive back. They need to have consistency. They got a lot of young players and players that have not played together. So therefore, they have to work on the continuity of this team, continuity of the running game, and that will invariably help the quarterback. And that's what they have to do to help that quarterback right around. Because what he's seeing right now, the first game of the season, he will not see that. He'll see something he's never seen before. So therefore, that's why you got to have your running game tight, your passing game, and be able to adapt right there on field. And all of that begins with the running game. And the one thing about it, it begins with that tight end, being the big-time tight end. So we're back to question number one. Can Logan Thomas get that done? Or do they have someone that can?
Well, you talked about the tight end position, and Andrew Wiley. Let's go back to the offensive line a little bit. Andrew Wiley came from Kansas City, did not have a good training camp because up in Kansas City, they had a pretty good offensive line. So maybe he's been exposed a little bit here in Washington, but the coaching staff, Eric Bieniemy, Ron Rivera, they're confident in him in this offensive line that they can get the job done with what they've got. But I know, Tony, that they're still looking for offensive linemen. But back to the tight end, Logan Thomas, Colt Turner has basically been the guy that they've been grooming a lot with the injuries to Logan Thomas. And he stepped it up. I mean, Eric Bieniemy has been on him from day one at training camp. And he picked it up in that joint practice against the Ravens and looked really good. Colt Turner, number 85. And Curtis Hodge is the guy that I didn't think was going to make the team. But because you said that the tight end position is so crucial in this offense, they kept him. And then John Bates is a rookie that, you know, we're not talking about some years back, a couple of years back, they drafted him, but he hasn't really materialized into what they were hoping. And, you know, the tight ends have to be able to block. Logan Thomas is your best blocking tight end. So hopefully Logan can stay healthy, Tony, because he makes this offense go tight end wise. But are you secure to just have 3 running backs that they kept? You know, normally they keep 4 with a fullback, but is Brian Robinson Jr. in his second year, and also Antonio Gibson, Tony, that has really looked fantastic in training camp and also in those preseason games. He lost some weight. He looks faster. You know, his style of run is kind of like conducive to Eric Bieniemy and what he likes. But talk about just keeping the 3 running backs, and Rodriguez is the guy that they drafted this year. Are you comfortable with the running backs that they got? Because I think Brian Robinson, love him, and he's, you know, he's that big bruiser back and whatever, but he's still adapting to the new offensive scheme. But I think that Antonio Gibson looked like he's more comfortable. What's your thoughts on the running backs?
Well, if you'll remember, Bieniemy always, when he was in Kansas City, he kept a plethora of running backs, and one would come out of the woods. So I'm sure they have some backup people that they're thinking about. Excuse me. They'll look on the waiver line. They'll look at different places, look at trades, and they'll make that move because the running back is too important. But what they do like, and what they did like what I think they wanted to do, and I can't say that's what they were doing in Kansas City, a running back that can do everything. Now, Mr. Robinson can do everything, but if you look at it, when you want those grind out yards, you got him there. Gibson can do all around. He was a wide receiver at once, so he can get that done. Then you have the other running backs that are duplicates of that, and you're always keeping them ready to go, but at the same time, it's still the same story as the offensive line can't get the job done. That's where it's going to begin for the quarterback, for the receivers, for everyone. If you can't stand up and throw the ball, you're not going to complete passes. If you can't run in the middle of the yard, you're not going to get those tough yardage. If you're going sideline to sideline, you're making the defense better for the simple reason you're giving them opportunity to use their speed. You have to be really balanced and do that right. If you look on it, we haven't talked much about the defense, but if you're looking at, they've kept another defensive lineman. They already had quite a few, but they got 2 big ones coming up for contracts this year. So what they may be looking at, and Donna, I'm asking you this, and this is nothing I've heard, fans. This is nothing we think is going to happen. But do you think that they may remove one of those defensive linemen and get a #1 draft choice back, and maybe get an offensive lineman or a couple of offensive linemen, and make their team better overall, but you have to give up a very good player?
Yeah, Tony, before I answer the question, pencil, I want you to talk a little bit. Let's go back to the offense for a quick second. We didn't talk about the wide receivers. Terry McLaurin had a toe injury, close to the end of training camp. It's not, I don't think, turf toe or anything like that. And he didn't play in the last preseason game. Not that he was anyway. When you look at the wide receiver group, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, who has really played well, and I mean, he's probably the best route runner or anybody. He reminds you of Henry Ellard, precise route runner. And then you got Curtis Samuels, and then Dex Mills. They kept him on because of his return, and they couldn't find anybody else that could do that. So he earned his spot back. Byron Pringle, and then Mitch Tilley. But let's go back to Terry. With that toe injury, is that something that could be a concern, as far as just planning on that?
I'm going to go way back on you. You don't even know these names, so you can look it up afterward. But look at baseball, Boston Red Sox, Fred Lynn, one of the best baseball players ever. His first injury that I saw him get was that jam toe, and he never recovered from it. And you look at his stats before and after, he was still a young player. Then we look at Deion Sanders when he came here. He injured his toe, never got back. Those toes are really tricky because you use so much their weight balancing. You use those to push off. And when you get those, even when you get well, at some point in a game, some point in practice, you have to use that to push off. That is a concerning injury. But at the same time, they got enough people where they can give him time if need be to get it well. But he's too important for the offense. But now you got 4 wide receivers. So whereas you do not have to rush him back because he is the key to the passing game. So looking at that, I'm concerned with it. But right now, if he got 2 or 3, he got a week or 2 before the season starts, he can work that thing. It's going to be, and there's a certain way you get him tight. I had those toes quite a few times, and they are hard to
That's because you was tripping over your own feet. That's because you was tripping over your own feet.
Is that what happened? With either I was faster than that basketball.
That wasn't that
on the screen now.
Hey, yeah, Tony. So back, yeah. So yeah, but they're not concerned that they're saying that it wasn't, the X-rays came back clear. But I'm just always cautious of those kind of injuries that could linger on because you're planning on that, you're cutting on that and all those things. But back to the defensive side, since we haven't been spending time on your favorite side of the ball, you're asking me that should they get rid of one of those frontline guys and as far as draft? Absolutely not, Tony, because they're hoping to be #1 in the NFL this year. As far as that defense, I talked to Cam Curl. He was talking about that they've got all of the weapons to potentially be in the #1 defense this year if everybody stays healthy. So I understand what you're saying. To get somebody that you need, you may have to give up somebody. Well, you're going to give up John Allen or Daron Payne, one of those guys? Absolutely not. As far as Chase Young and Sweat, and you would love what Sweat is doing right now because he has really played well. And, Young has been nicked a little bit at the end of training camp, but he needs to have a big year because both of these 2 guys are in the contract years. And then the young studs, as far as C.J. Henry, who they drafted defensive end, and Andre Jones Jr., number 48, who we talked about earlier during this segment. As far as him coming on the defensive end. So you got some young bucks as far as coming along. But when they were talking about paying last year, possibly getting rid of him, I said, no way. You can't get rid of guys that are playmakers. So I think that you have to wait and see how Chase Young is going to play before you say, I want to give up some of those. Because, Tony, you well know that it's hard to get that kind of talent up front. Why would you want to give it up, Tony?
The only thing, the reason you want to give it up is if you have to. And that means making your overall team better. And you have enough people. It's two positions. You have enough people they can get rid of one and still be the same or close to the same. That's receiver and defensive line. So you look at those three, those are pretty strong items on the team, but at the same time, you got to improve your offensive line. You got to make sure you got that right tight end. And you got to make sure, we haven't really put a check on the linebackers and defensive backs, but we still have to go back to them. And ladies and gentlemen and fans, when we're talking about this, we're not talking about what we think has to happen now. We're talking about what we see that this team can get back to where they want to be, and that's the Super Bowl. And when you look at that, it's just like Coach Gilbert always say, everyone on the team, every position is important. That's what they had to get in their head. So we're talking about specific things right now, Donna, but for this overall team, they're in too good of a division. They got to improve in everything each and every day. When they practice, they got to practice like that we practice like it was easy to play the game as hard as we practice. So that's what they need right now. But overall, Donna, this team is ready to go. And these first few games are going to be very, very important for this team. That's where they have to develop their personality. Whereas this is what we're going to do. We're young, we're this, we're different, but this is what you got to deal with. And that's what I like about the young players that when you did those interviews, those players let you know, I'm supposed to be here. I put in the work. That's the foundation you need.
Hey, Taylor, I like all that, but the concern on this defensive side is there's one. As far as the linebacker group, everybody is saying that that is the area of concern. So on linebacker, you got Hudson, David Mayo, Jamison Davis, and also Cody Barton. Are you comfortable with the linebackers that they've got on this roster right now? And what have you seen in the past, and what are you hoping to see in this season from that group?
Well, in the past, I saw him get a certain kind of linebacker, and it usually was a linebacker that could run sideline to sideline. And I'm sure the coach had that when he was with different teams, and he would like to see that again. But when I played, you always had a Dick Buckets or somebody in the middle. You had a bruiser. You had someone that teams didn't want to run against. And they may develop into that. It's such a new game right now where linebackers got to be able to cover tight ends coming across the middle. They got to jump off sometime and help with a double team. So it's not the same job description. But at the same time, these are young linebackers. They've had to make changes the last 2 or 3 years. But what did they make them for the best? What we would know, and it's like when you're cooking, Donna, the last ingredients you put in, it has to work with the first. It's not going to be any good. And you know that because my homemade rolls may be one of the best.
Well, I can't believe you mixed that up right. Did you just mix up the team formula right as far as the baking and what it's going to take? I know you pulled that out of your head because I didn't.
It's all part of the game.
But Tony, let's go to the cornerback. The secondary, the corners and the safety, probably the best that you will see in football, because this is another area of the defense. You talk about the front, the back is also pretty solid. Emmanuel Forbes, who they had drafted this year, everybody was talking about how thin he is, but he's a playmaker. And Tony, he's not backing down from nobody, no matter what his size is. Benjamin St. Juste, we know that he can play safety, he can play corner, he can play inside side. So if he can stay healthy, this is a guy that will really shine in this offense, in the defense, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy for the last few years. But if he can, he's a playmaker. Kendall Fuller, the guy that's been here in his last year of his contract, and you're talking about Christian Holmes and Danny Johnson, who got nicked up in that joint practice. Unfortunately, bad play by the Raiders when they slammed him, but that cornerback position is solid. You go over and look at the safeties, Quinn Martin, the guy that they drafted this year. Force, who has really picked it up the last years, and he's a playmaker. Cam Curl, what can you say about Cam? He's what makes that secondary go. And then you got Percy Butler and Jeremy Reeves. When I talk about the cornerbacks and the safety position, Tony, you got to almost stand up and clap your hands on that one and throw up your hands, because that group is so solid and talented.
Solid and talented as individuals. How are they as a team? And as you know, in the last few years, linebackers and safeties are usually the same person in a lot of different situations. So when you look at these young individuals, you got a lot of individuals out there, but we didn't know on the Monday night when we had Darryl Green and everybody was wondering, was he too small or was he this, that we were looking at a Hall of Famer. I didn't know when we had a guy 6'2", 6'3" in New England named Mike Haynes looking at another Hall of Famer. So what it is, these guys have to have really short memories. They have to go game to game, and every challenge has to be a different challenge. We have that right now in training camp, but we need to see what happened on the game day. And one thing I have, they may get beaten, they may make interceptions, but at the same time, they got to have that confidence. They must go forward in it, but everyone, each group must go forward with the rest of the team. In other words, you want complete teams. That's what wins Super Bowls, not a lot of great individuals.
Well, let me just say this, Tony. When I say great individuals, I'm talking about great on the field. These guys can play. They played well last year down the stretch. And I think that you're going to see them play even better because they've been together a little longer. And when I said you're going to see more forced fumbles from this guys, more interceptions, you're going to see these guys make big plays in that secondary. They're going to help the defensive front. Defense front has to do their job. It's putting the pressure on. But Tony, we're going to come back and talk a breakdown as far as the NFC East, the Commanders, the Giants, the Eagles, and the Cowboys, and talk more about that before the season starts. But people catch our podcast on whatever platform that they listen to it. Listen to me and not Tony. You know, he's still trying to catch on. But they can listen to that. Make sure that you subscribe and like as far as our podcast, and tell us, give us your comments of what you want to hear more of. But Tony, you got the closing words, because let me just say this. I'll let you have the closing words.
Well, you know, Donna, I appreciate that. And one thing I can say is you look at this team and kind of remind me when I was traded here from New England, no one knew what we could do or how we were going to do it. We were a bunch of guys that each person had proved they could play by themselves, but not together. We got together and we played in every detail and everything. I see that in this team right here. I see that this team worked. No matter what happened in the first few games, they can still make it happen. We haven't had that feel here for a long time. We have it here right now. I think we should go with it. And individuals such as ourselves, we're not going to continue to talk negatively about them, but we will point out the problems they have. And for you fans, remember, this is our 39th year starting a television show, Tony McGee's Pro Football Plus. So therefore, hey, come watch us there, watch us here, but we're going to tell you the truth. And Donna, as you always say, and we say, we don't say goodbye, we say in a minute.
In a minute.